The emergency signal cut through space. Like a knife, it was weak, desperate, and repeating on every frequency that existed. Corporal Jiho Kang sat in the communications room of the Terran Marine ship, listening to it for the third time. He did not speak, he just listened to the fear in those alien voices. Please, anyone who can hear this message, our world is dying. They came from the dark spaces. They are taking our people. We have no weapons. We have no soldiers. We are scholars and artists. We build things of beauty, not war. Please, if anyone hears this, help us. The voice belonged to Velen. G had never met one, but he knew about them. They were tall and thin with 4 arms and shells that shimmered like oil on water. They made music that could make grown men cry. They wrote poetry that had been translated into every language in the galaxy. They had never heard anyone in their entire history. Now someone was hurting them. Lieutenant Hannah Park walked into the room. She was young for her rank, only 28, but she had fought in places most people only had nightmares about. Her face was calm, but Gio could see the anger in her eyes. Play it again, she said. Gio hit the button. The Velen voice filled the room once more. Behind the main voice, there were other sounds. Explosions, screaming, the sound of buildings falling down. The crawl, Hana said quietly, has to be. Jiho nodded. The crawl dominion was known across the outer systems. They were raiders, slavers and killers. They took what they wanted and destroyed everything else. They were strong, brutal, and had no mercy. Command won't authorize a response, G said. The Velen system is not part of the alliance. No treaty, no agreement. Politically complicated, Hana laughed. But there was no humor in it. Politically complicated. People are dying, and it's politically complicated. She walked to the window and looked out at the stars. The ship was quiet around them. Most of the crew was sleeping. It was the third watch, the lonely hours, when only essential staff stayed awake. Where's Captain Dunn? Jiho asked. On the bridge. He's been there for 2 hours. Since the signal first came in. Hana turned back to face him. He's making the same calculations I am. We're 3 jumps from the Velen system. With emergency protocols, we could be there in 6 hours. Without authorization. Without authorization. Gio stood up. He was a small man, lean and quick. He had been a Marine for 4 years. In that time he had learned one important thing. When people needed help, you helped them. Everything else was just noise. What do you need me to do? He asked. Hana smiled. It was a warrior's smile. Sharp and fierce. Wake up the squad. Combat loadout. Tell them we might be going on a trip. 30 minutes later, the entire platoon stood in the ready room. 43 men and women in various states of dress, all looking at Captain de Yensiu. As he stood at the front, he was an older man, 45, with gray in his hair and scars on his hands. He had been fighting for longer than some of his soldiers had been alive. You've all heard the signal by now, Dian said. His voice was rough like gravel. The Velrins are calling for help. Command is debating what to do. Meetings, committees, votes. By the time they decide, there might not be any left to save. He paused and looked at each face in the room. I'm not waiting for permission. This ship can make the jump in 6 hours. We can deploy in 7. We can start saving lives in 8. He crossed his arms. But I won't order anyone to come. This is against regulations. Could be court-martial for all of us, so I'm asking for volunteers. Private Tejo Beck was the first to step forward. He was 19 years old, the youngest in the unit, and carried the biggest guns. "I volunteer, sir." Then Sergeant Sora Kim stepped up. She was the unit's engineer. Small and quick with a mind like a computer. "I'm in." One by one, every single Marine in the room stepped forward. 43 people willing to risk everything for aliens they had never met. Doyen nodded slowly. "Good, Dr. Che. You're with us too. We might need a xenobiologist." Dr. Eunice was standing in the back. She was not a Marine, just a scientist, assigned to their ship to study alien life. She was young, nervous, and had never been in combat, but she stepped forward anyway. "Those people need help," she said quietly. "I won't stay behind." The ship's engines roared to life. An hour later, the jump coordinates were set for the Velen system. Marines checked their weapons, their armor, their equipment. Everything had to be perfect. Jiho sat in the drop bay, cleaning his rifle for the third time. Hana sat down next to him, nervous. She asked. "Always," Jiho admitted, "but that's good and keeps you sharp." The Crawl fight hard. They like close combat, brutal. "We fight harder," Ji said simply. Hana smiled. "Yes, we do." The first jump happened at 400 hours. The ship shuddered and reality twisted around them. Space folded and they emerged 300 light years away. 2 more jumps to go. On the planet Kish Prime, the Velrons were dying. The Crow had been attacking for 3 days. Their ships filled the sky like dark clouds. Their soldiers walked through the streets, taking people away in chains. The Velron peacekeepers tried to fight with their ceremonial weapons, but they fell like grass before a blade. Elder Veer stood in the council chamber, watching his city burn. He was old, his shell cracked and faded. He had lived for 200 years and never seen war. Now, war had found him. "Should we send the signal again?" a younger council member asked. "Yes," Vithar said. "Keep sending it. Someone must hear, someone must care." But in his heart he did not believe it. The galaxy was a cold place. No one came to help people who could not help themselves. He was wrong. In the darkness above the atmosphere, reality began to shimmer. Strange distortions formed in the air like heat waves on a summer day. The Crawl sensors picked up the anomalies but could not identify them. Inside those distortions, Terran drop ships were entering the atmosphere. Marines checked their weapons one last time. Hana Park stood at the front of her ship, looking at her soldiers. "Remember," she said, "we're here to protect people. We're here to help show them what Marines do best." The ships descended through the clouds, wrapped in the strange fog of their stealth fields. The Crow looked up and saw only haze. They did not know that death was falling from the sky. They were about to learn. The drop ships fell through the morning sky like dark seeds. The Haze protocol was working perfectly. The stealth fields created strange fog patterns around each vessel, bending light and sensor waves to the Crawl soldiers on the ground. It looked like weird weather, nothing more. Corporal G. Kong gripped his rifle as his ship descended. Through the small window he could see the Velen city of Thessa. Below, smoke rose from dozens of fires. Buildings lay in ruins. In the streets, he saw the Crawl moving in formation and smaller figures running from them. 30 seconds. The pilot called back. G looked at the other Marines in the bay. Tehajo sat across from him, checking his heavy machine gun for the fifth time. The weapon was huge, designed to punch through vehicle armor. Next to him, Sergeant Sora Kim was reviewing building schematics on her data pad. Always planning, always thinking. 10 seconds, prepare for deployment. The ship touched down in a ruined plaza. Hidden by collapsed buildings, the rear ramp dropped and cold air rushed in. Lieutenant Hana Park was first out, her rifle up and ready. The squad followed. In perfect formation, Jiho's boots hit alien soil for the first time. The ground was soft, covered in something like moss. Strange plants grew between the stones. The air smelled like flowers. And smoke spread out. Hana ordered quietly, "Jiho, take your team to the high ground. I want eyes on everything." Jiho and 3 other Marines moved quickly through the ruins. They climbed what had been a beautiful tower, now half destroyed by crawl weapons. From the top, Jiho could see the entire city. It was worse than he thought. Velrents were gathered in a large building near the city center, hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The crawl had surrounded the building with soldiers and vehicles. They were not attacking, yet they were waiting, enjoying the fear. "This is Scout 1, Jiho said into his radio. "I count approximately 300 crawl soldiers, 20 armored vehicles. They have the civilians surrounded." "Copy that," Hana replied. "Stay hidden. We move when Captain Doyen gives the word." But first, they had to meet the Velrons. Hana led a small team through the back streets toward the council building. Dr. Yuna Chai was with them, looking nervous but determined. They moved like ghosts, using every shadow, every piece of cover. The crow never saw them. The council building was old and beautiful. Even damaged, it was impressive. Tall pillars held up a dome that shimmered in the light. Guards stood at the entrance, Velran peacekeepers in ceremonial armor that would not stop a sharp stick, much less a bullet. The guards raised their weapons when they saw the Marines approaching. Then they froze. They had never seen anything like these armored humans before. Hana raised her hand slowly, showing she meant no harm. "We heard your call," she said. "We came to help." One of the guards made a clicking sound. His translator struggled with the words, then managed. You are not Velran." "What are you?" "We're human from Earth. We're Terran Marines." The guard stared at her. "You came because we asked." "That's what we do," Hana said simply. "Can we speak to your leaders?" 5 minutes later, Hana stood in the council chamber. Elder Veer looked at her with all 4 of his eyes. He was tall, taller than any human, but so thin he looked like he might break. His shell was beautiful even in his old age, swirling with colors that had no names in human languages. "You are real," he said quietly. I thought no one would come." Hana removed her helmet. Her face was young, scarred, and absolutely determined. "We're real and we're not alone. I have 40 Marines in the city right now. A company ship in orbit. We're here to help you survive this." 40 soldiers, Vector said. He looked toward the window, where smoke still rose. "The Crow have thousands. We've faced worse odds." Another council member spoke up. Why would you risk yourselves for us? We have nothing to offer you, no payment, no resources. We are not part of your alliance." Hana looked at each of them. "Where I come from, you don't need a reason to help people. You don't need a treaty or payment. You just need to hear someone calling for help." She paused. "We heard you. We came. That's the end of it." Vector's shell seemed to shimmer. Yuna realized he was crying in his own way. We are scholars and artists, we do not understand war, we do not know how to fight. You don't need to, Hana said. That's what we're for, but I need information. How many civilians do you have? Where are they? What are the crawl doing? For the next hour they planned. Veer showed them maps of the city. He explained where the Velans were hiding. Almost 8,000 civilians were packed into shelters across Thessa. The crawl were moving slowly, savoring their victory, taking people away in small groups. They enjoy our fear. Vithar said bitterly. They make it last. That ends now, Hana said. She activated her calm. Captain Diyen, this is Park. I'm with the Velen Council, requesting full deployment authorization. Captain Diyen's voice came back. Immediately, authorization granted. All units begin defensive operations. Remember, we're here to protect civilians. Rules of engagement are weapons free on any crawl in combat zones. Keep it clean, keep it professional, and keep those people safe. Across the city, Marines began to move. Sergeant Sora Kim took her engineering team to the main shelter. The Velen building was sturdy but had no real defenses. In 30 minutes, Sora had them reinforcing walls, setting up firing positions, creating fallback routes. The Velerans watched in amazement as these humans worked with such speed and precision. Up in his tower, Jiho watched through his rifle scope as a crawl patrol moved down the street below. 6 soldiers, big and armored, carrying weapons that looked like they were designed for killing, not fighting. They were laughing. One of them kicked a Velen statue, shattering it. Scout 1 to command, Jiho said quietly. I have a patrol in Sector 3. They're desecrating cultural sites. Let them, Hana replied. We're not ready yet. Soon. The crawl had no idea what was coming. They had conquered dozens of worlds. They had crushed every enemy. They were strong, brutal, and had never known defeat. They had never fought humans before. In the central plaza, Crawl War Master Gresh stood on top of an armored vehicle, watching his soldiers work. He was huge even for a crawl, with scars covering his armor. He had led raids on 20 worlds. This was just another easy victory. A lieutenant approached him. War Master, the sensors detected some atmospheric distortions earlier during the morning. Weather, Grez said dismissively. This planet has strange weather. Yes, War Master. Also, one of our patrols in the eastern sector has not reported in. Gretch shrugged. Communication error, or they stopped to have some fun with the locals. Let them enjoy themselves. Tomorrow we begin the real harvest. He had no idea that the patrol was already gone, disappeared, eliminated so quickly and quietly. They never had time to send a distress call. In the council chamber, Hana was explaining the plan to Veer. We can't win a straight fight against their numbers, but we don't need to. We just need to make it too expensive for them to stay. We hurt them until they decide this planet is not worth it. And if they do not leave, Vithar asked. Hana smiled. It was not a nice smile. Then we kill them all, but let's start with making them regret coming here. As night began to fall over Thessa, the crawl prepared for another easy night of terror. The Velrans huddled in their shelters, praying to gods that seemed to have abandoned them. But in the darkness, between buildings, in the ruins and shadows, 40 Terran Marines were taking Position, they checked their weapons, confirmed their fields of fire, and waited for the order. On a rooftop, G lay perfectly still behind his rifle. Below him, a crawl patrol was moving toward the main shelter. They were about to attack, about to hurt innocent people. His radio clicked once. Hana's voice was calm. All units, weapons free. Show them what Marines do. Jiho's finger found the trigger. The night was about to become very loud. First shot came from Private Mir Song's rifle. She was positioned 300 m away on top of a damaged building. Through her scope, she had watched the crawl patrol approach the shelter entrance. She had watched them raise their weapons toward the guards. She fired once. The lead crawl officer's head snapped back and he fell. Chaos erupted. The remaining crawl soldiers spun around trying to find where the shot came from. They never got the chance. From 6 different positions, Marines opened fire. The carefully planned kill zone worked perfectly. In 15 seconds, the entire crawl patrol was down. Contact Sector 7. Jiho reported calmly, his own rifle firing in controlled bursts. Enemy patrol eliminated. No friendly casualties. Across the city, more gunfire erupted. Every crawl unit near a civilian shelter suddenly found themselves under attack from enemies they could not see. Marines fought from windows, from rooftops, from behind rubble. They appeared, fired, and vanished before the crawl could respond. Inside the main shelter, the Velrents heard the explosions and gunfire. They huddled together in fear. Then the door opened and a human in armor stepped inside. It was Corporal Hyan Lim, the unit's medic. He removed his helmet to show his face. "It's okay," he said gently. "We're here to protect you. Stay inside. Stay down and you'll be safe." A young Velen, barely an adult, stared at him. "You are fighting for us?" "Of course," Han said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "That's our job." Outside, the battle intensified. The crawl were pulling back, regrouping. They had never faced an enemy like this. Every time they tried to advance, precise fire cut them down. Every time they thought they had found a sniper position, it was already empty, warm. Master Grez stood in his command center, watching the tactical displays in disbelief. In 1 hour he had lost 40 soldiers, 40, and he had not killed a single enemy. He had not even seen most of them. "What are we fighting?" he roared at his officers. One of them had managed to get a brief visual on a Marine before dying. The image was played back on the screen. Gretchen stared at the armored figure. "Pull up the galactic database," he ordered. "Find out what species that is." 5 minutes later, he had his answer. His intelligence officer was pale. "War Master, they're humans from Earth. I do not know the species. There they are. From a Class 12 death world." The room went silent. Every crawl knew what a death world was. Planets were simply surviving, required constant fighting. Planets with deadly predators, poisonous plants, extreme weather. Most intelligent species evolved on Class 4 or Class 5 worlds, comfortable places. Class 12 was almost unheard of. How do they even survive on such a world? Gretch asked. The intelligence officer pulled up data. They evolved as pursuit hunters. They can run for hours without stopping. They can heal from injuries that would kill most species. They're pack hunters with complex social structures, and he paused, reading in disbelief. They actually enjoy fighting. They write songs about war. They celebrate their warriors. Grez looked at the tactical display. Again, how many are there? Unknown. Could be hundreds, could be thousands. But in reality, it was still just 43. Marines, they were simply very, very good at what they did, Lieutenant Hana. Park was coordinating the defense from a command post near the council building. Elder Veer watched her work with fascination. She was calm even as explosions echoed outside. She gave orders in a quiet voice, and her soldiers responded instantly. "This is Sergeant Kim," Sara's voice came over the radio. "I need permission to blow the bridge in Sector 4. The Crawl are using it to bring in reinforcements." "Civilians clear?" Hana asked. "All evacuated 30 minutes ago." "Do it." 5 seconds later, the ancient bridge exploded in a spectacular blast. Crawl vehicles tumbled into the river below. Sara had used just enough explosive to drop the bridge without damaging nearby civilian structures. It was art in its own way. "You fight with such precision," Vithar said to Hana. "No wasted movement, no unnecessary destruction. We're not here to destroy," Hana replied. "We're here to protect." Big difference. A crawl counterattack hit the eastern defensive line. 20 soldiers with heavy armor tried to punch through to reach a shelter. They ran straight into Private Tahoe Bake and his machine gun. TJO was young, but he knew his weapon like a musician knows their instrument. He fired in controlled bursts, each one exactly where it needed to be. His position was reinforced with sandbags and debris carefully constructed by Sergeant Sora. The crawl fire bounced off his cover while his bullets tore through their armor. When the attack was over, all 20 crawl were down. Tehahu had used exactly 200 rounds, no wasted ammunition. Beck's wall holds, he reported. The veterans who heard the transmission would remember that name. Later, they would put it on monuments. As the night wore on, the crawl began to understand the truth. They were not fighting an army, they were fighting ghosts, demons, things that appeared from nowhere, struck like lightning, and vanished. Gretsch finally made a decision: pull all units back to the Central Command Zone, defensive perimeter. At dawn, we will advance with our full force and crush these humans. It was exactly what Hana wanted him to do. Concentrated forces, predictable movement. She smiled as she watched them pull back on her tactical display. "They're grouping up," she told Captain the Yen over a secure channel. "Good," Dian replied. "Makes them easier to hit." "But Hana, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "Long-range sensors detected incoming crawl signatures. Battle fleet, they're coming to reinforce the ground forces." Hana felt ice in her stomach. "How long?" 18 hours. "Maybe less." "How big?" "Cruiser class. Support ships estimate 3,000 more soldiers." Hana closed her eyes. 43 Marines could hold against 300 crawl. Maybe even 500 if they were smart and lucky, but 3,000 with air support. "Order, sir?" she asked quietly. There was a long pause, then Doyen spoke, and his voice was iron. "We dig in, we prepare, and we make them pay for every meter of ground. Terran High Command is scrambling a fleet, but they're 4 days out. We need to hold until then. 4 days against those odds. You got a better idea?" Hana looked around the command center. She saw Vithar and his council, people who had trusted her. She saw Dr. Tayuna Che working to understand biology so Han could treat They're wounded better, she saw the determination on every face. No, sir. She said, no better idea we hold. She gathered her senior Marines an hour later. Jiho, Teho, Sora, Hun, Mai. They all looked tired but ready. New situation, Hana said. Crow. Reinforcements coming. Big ones we have. 18 hours to prepare. No one panicked. Marines did not panic. What do you need? Sora asked. Everything. Fortifications, fallback positions, traps, anything you can build in 18 hours. Sora grinned. It was not a nice grin. I can build you a nightmare. Gee. Spoke up. The Velrons, some of them want to fight. They're not soldiers, Hana said. No, but they're brave, and this is their home. Let me teach them the basics, how to fire a weapon, how to take cover, how to stay alive. Hana thought about it. Basic training only. Defensive positions, I don't want them on the front lines. Understood. As her Marines scattered to prepare, Hana walked out onto a balcony. The city was quiet now. The crowd had pulled back. In the distance she could see fires still burning. Vehar joined her. I heard, he said, more of them are coming. Yes, you should leave. Take your soldiers and escape while you can. You have done enough. Hana looked at him. We don't leave people behind ever. It's kind of our thing. You will die here. Maybe, Hana admitted, but if we do, we'll make sure you survive. That's the mission. That's what matters. Veer was quiet for a long time. Then he said, your people are very strange. You carry such violence in you, such capacity for death, and yet you use it only to protect. You are paradoxes. We're human, Hana said. We love hard. And we fight hard. That's just who we are. Below them, Sergeant Sora was already directing Velen workers in constructing barricades. Private Teho was teaching a group of youngs how to handle a rifle. Corporal Hyan was setting up a proper medical station. Every Marine was working, preparing, refusing to quit. The Crawl fleet was coming. Death was coming, but the Marines were ready, and somewhere in deep space, Terran warships were burning toward the battle at maximum speed, racing to reach their comrades. They would not make it in time, but they would come because that's what humans did. They heard the call. They answered. Always. The work began immediately. Sergeant Sora Kim stood in the central plaza, looking at a ruined city and seeing a fortress. Her mind was already working, calculating angles, sightlines, kill zones. We need to channel them, she said to the Velen workers gathered around her. Make them come at us where we're strongest. Block off these streets here, here, and here. Use rubble from the damaged buildings. Make it look natural. The Velrons worked through the night. They had never built fortifications before, but they learned fast. Soon entire streets were blocked. What looked like random debris was actually carefully placed to force any attacking force into specific paths where Marines would be waiting. Private Teho was setting up his heavy machine gun position when a young approached him. She was small, her shell still bright with youth. Her name was Vesa. I want to learn to fight, she said. Teho looked at her. This isn't a game. People die in war. My family is dead, Vesa said quietly. The crawl took them 3 days ago. I will not hide while others fight for my world. Teho saw the determination in her eyes. He had seen that look before in mirrors, in the faces of other Marines who had lost everything and decided to stand anyway. Okay, he said, but you do exactly what I Say exactly, understand. Over the next few hours, Tejo taught Vesa and 15 other Velans the absolute basics: how to hold a rifle, how to aim, how to take cover, how to not die in the first 5 seconds of combat. You're not soldiers, he told them. You won't fight like soldiers, but you can defend a position, you can cover a retreat, you can keep people safe while the real fighters do the heavy work. Corporal Jiho Kang was on a rooftop mapping the entire city into his tactical computer. Every street, every building, every possible firing position, he marked where the crawl would likely advance from, where the civilians were sheltering, where his fellow Marines were preparing. This is going to be bad, he said to himself. Very bad, agreed Private Murray. Song, she had joined him setting up her sniper position. But we've been in bad situations before. Not this bad, Meyer shrugged. Then this is a day for legends. Either way, it will be a story worth telling. At the makeshift medical station, Corporal Hyan Lim was working with Dr. Yunache. She had been studying biology nonstop, learning how their bodies worked, where they were vulnerable, how to treat their injuries. Their blood is copper-based, not iron. Yuna explained. If they're wounded, the bleeding looks blue. Don't panic, it's normal for them, and their shells can crack under impact, but the shell itself isn't vital. The soft tissue underneath is what matters. Han memorized every detail. He had treated humans in combat before. Now he had to be ready to save an entirely different species. A Velan healer was working with him, learning human medical techniques. The two of them could barely communicate, but medicine was medicine. They understood each other where it mattered. As dawn approached, Captain Diencia walked through the defensive positions. He checked every firing lane, every barrier, every fallback point. His Marines were exhausted but ready. The Velrents were terrified but determined. Listen up, he said over the general. Calm. In a few hours the Crawl fleet will arrive. They will land fresh troops. They will be angry because we embarrassed them. They will come at us with everything they have. He paused, looking at the city around him. Our job is simple. We hold, we protect the civilians. We make the Crawl regret every step they take in the city. We are Terran Marines. This is what we do. This is what we're for. So let's show these bastards why humanity is not to be messed with. A cheer went up from the Marines. Even some of them joined in, their clicking voices mixing with human shouts. Then Specialist Siwu Han's voice crackled. Over the radio, he was there. Communication specialist, monitoring all frequencies. Captain, I'm picking up a new signal coming from high orbit, the Crawl fleet. No, sir, this is a Terran signature. It's Major Aaron Cho and the atmospheric fighters from the carrier group. Doyen felt his heart lift. Carrier made it. Negative, just the fighter wing. They burned ahead at maximum speed. Major Aaron says they couldn't leave you hanging. 15 minutes later, 6 Terran atmospheric fighters screamed over the city. The Velrens stared in awe at the sleek craft. The Marines cheered. Major Aaron Cho's voice came over the channel. Sorry, we're late to the party. Where do you need us? Everywhere, Doyen replied. The Crawl fleet will be here in less than an hour. Then let's give them a warm welcome. The fighters took up positions in the sky, waiting. Each one carried enough firepower to level a city block. But they would not use it carelessly. This was a city full of civilians. Elder Vithar stood with Lieutenant Hana Park watching the preparations. You have turned our city into a fortress, he said, temporarily. Hana replied, when this is over you can rebuild it however you want, beautiful. Again, but first we need to make sure there's an after to rebuild in. I have lived 200 years, Vector said. I have studied philosophy and art and the nature of consciousness, but I never understood violence. I never understood war. Pray you never have to, Hana said. War is the worst thing we do, but sometimes it's necessary to protect what we love. And you love us, Veer asked. You barely know us, Hana smiled. We know your people. We know you're scared. We know you need help. That's enough. The Crawl fleet arrived right on schedule. Massive ships that blotted out the sun. Drop pods began to rain from the sky like deadly meteors, thousands of them. All units stand ready. Down ordered. Let them land. Let them get organized. Then we hit them. Major Aaron and her fighters were the first to strike. They dove through the dropping pods, missiles destroying dozens before they could land. The Crawl fleet tried to provide air support, but they had not expected to face Terran fighters. The dogfight in the sky was brief and brutal. 2 Terran fighters went down, their pilots ejecting and parachuting into the city, but 12 Crawl support craft were destroyed. The odds were evening out just a little. On the ground, 3,000 fresh Crawl soldiers began to deploy. Warm Master Gretsch was with them this time. He had brought his elite guard, his best warriors. He would personally crush these humans and take their leader's head as a trophy. Forward, he roared. Show no mercy. Kill everything that moves. The Crawl advanced in massive formation. They expected resistance. They were ready for a fight. They were not ready for what actually happened. The first street they entered was rigged with Sergeant Sara's explosives. When the front ranks reached the middle of the block, she pressed the detonator. Buildings collapsed on both sides, burying hundreds of Corral soldiers in rubble. Those who survived ran into the second street. This one had mines carefully placed, precisely measured. More explosions tore through their ranks. The Crawl pulled back, regrouped, and tried a different approach. They found that street blocked with barricades. When they tried to climb over, Marine rifles opened fire from concealed positions. Everywhere they went, they met resistance. Nowhere could they advance without taking casualties, and they still could not see most of their enemies. Jiho watched through his scope as a Crawl officer tried to organize his troops. One shot, the officer fell. The troops scattered in confusion. Jiho moved to a different position before they could pinpoint his location. Mir was doing the same thing from the opposite side of the city. Her rifle sang its deadly song, each shot perfectly placed. Crow commanders began to fear showing themselves. Any leader who stood up to give orders became a target. Tehaho's position was hit by a major assault. 50 CWL soldiers charged his barricade. His machine gun roared, spitting fire and steel. Beside him, Vesa and her Velrun volunteers fired their rifles with shaking hands. They were not good shots. They were terrified, but they hit enough targets to matter, and more importantly, they did not run. When the assault broke, Teho looked at Vesa. She was crying, her shell trembling, but she was still at her post. You did good, he said. I'm scared, she admitted. So am I. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and Staying, anyway, the battle raged for hours. The crawl kept coming in waves. The Marines kept cutting them down. Veterans kept supporting, kept helping, kept refusing to give up. In the medical station, Hun worked without rest. Human casualties were starting to come in. Minor wounds mostly. The Marines were too professional to take stupid risks. But Velen volunteers were being hurt, and he treated them with the same care he gave his fellow soldiers. As afternoon became evening, the crawl pulled back. They had lost over 1,000 soldiers. They had gained exactly 3 city blocks. At this rate, it would take weeks to conquer the city. Grez stood in his command center, staring at the casualty reports in disbelief. How many humans are there? He demanded. Best estimate, war master, maybe 50, perhaps 60. 50 humans, and they had stopped an army. Tomorrow, Gresh said, his voice cold. Tomorrow we destroy them all. No mercy. No prisoners. We burn this city to the ground if we have to. But on the Terran side there was grim satisfaction. They had held. Day 1 was done. 3 more to go. The second day was worse than the first. Warm Master Grez threw everything at the Marine positions, artillery, armored vehicles, wave after wave of soldiers who seemed to care nothing for their own lives. The eastern defensive line was hit hardest. Private Tahoe by X position, which the Velerins had started calling Beck's Wall, took the brunt of the assault. For 6 straight hours TJO fired his machine gun until the barrel glowed red. When one weapon overheated, he switched to another. When he ran low on ammunition, Velrin volunteers ran through enemy fire to bring him more. Vesa fought beside him the entire time. She was no longer the scared girl from yesterday. She loaded magazines. She called out targets. She fired when she had a clear shot. When Tejo took shrapnel in his arm, she bandaged it. Without being asked, "You're becoming Marine," Tejo told her, gritting his teeth against the pain. "No," Vesa replied, "I am becoming. This is what we should have always been, strong enough to protect what we love." Corporal Jiho Kang ran out of rifle ammunition by midday. He did not panic. He simply took a crawl weapon from a fallen enemy and kept fighting. Weapon was heavier, less accurate, but it fired. That was enough. Private Me Song had to relocate 7 times as the crawl tried to hunt her down. Each time they thought they had found her, she was already gone. Firing from a new position, she had run out of her standard ammunition and was using special rounds now. Each shot had to count. Her rifle cracked. A crawl officer fell. Crack. A soldier operating heavy weapons fell. Crack. Another commander down. The crawl began to call her the ghost. They feared to give orders where she might be watching. Sergeant Sora Kim's explosives were running low. She had prepared dozens of traps, but the crawl were learning to avoid them, so she got creative. She rigged abandoned vehicles to explode. She turned CWL's own minds against them. She made every street a gamble. At the medical station, Corporal Hyan Lim was overwhelmed. Marines were coming in with serious wounds. Now the Velen volunteers had casualties. Dr. Eunice worked beside him, her hands covered in both red human blood and blue blood. She was no longer a scientist observing from safety. She was a healer. In a war zone, 1 young Marine died. Despite their best efforts, Hayan felt the soldiers' pulse stop under his fingers. He wanted to scream. He wanted to cry. Instead, he closed the Marines' eyes, said a quiet prayer, and turned to the next patient. There would be time for grief later if they survived. By the third day, the situation was desperate. The Marines were down to their last ammunition reserves. 3 Marines were dead, 7 were seriously wounded. The Velen volunteers had lost 12 fighters, but they still held. The Crawl had lost nearly 2,000 soldiers. Their vehicles were destroyed. Their commanders were demoralized. Some units were refusing to advance into the meat grinder that the city had become. Grez stood on the edge of the city, watching the battle. He could see the Velrin Council building in the distance, so close, just a few more blocks, but those blocks might as well have been on another planet. War Master, one of his officers, said hesitantly, perhaps we should withdraw. The cost is too high. GH grabbed the officer by the throat. We do not retreat. We are Crawl. We take what we want. But War Master, these humans are nothing, soft species from a backwater world. We will crush them. But even as he spoke, Grez knew the truth. These humans were not soft. They were anything but soft. They were the hardest thing he had ever fought. On the 4th morning, Lieutenant Hannah Park stood on the walls, looking exhausted but unbroken. She had not slept in 3 days. None of them had. Captain De Yen stood beside her. The relief fleet arrives in 8 hours, De Yen said. We just need to hold a little longer. 8 hours might as well be 8 years, Hannah replied. We're almost out of everything. Ammunition, explosives, medical supplies. Then we fight with rocks if we have to. Hannah laughed. It was a tired sound. Marines to the end. Marines to the end. Down agreed. That afternoon, Grez launched his final assault. Every soldier he had left, every weapon, everything, he would take the city or die trying. The attack came from all directions at once. Thousands of Crawl soldiers flooding into the streets. The Marine defensive lines buckled, fell back, buckled again. Tehaho's position was finally overrun. He fought with his sidearm until that was empty, then with his knife, then with his bare hands. Vesa and her volunteers fought beside him, but they were being pushed back. Fall back, TJO ordered everyone to the council building. The retreat was chaotic but controlled. Marines covered each other, moving in sequence. The Velen volunteers ran while the humans held the line. Then the humans ran while the Velrons fired from cover. They made it to the council building, the last defensive position, the last stand. Gio took position in a window. This is it, he said to the Marine next to him. No more falling back. Then we make it count. The Crawl surrounded the building. Grez himself was there now, leading from the front. He wanted to personally kill these humans who had humiliated him. Surrender, he roared. Surrender and we will kill you. Quickly, Doyen appeared on the balcony, standing tall despite his wounds. We're Terran Marines, he called back. We don't surrender. We don't quit, and we sure as hell don't bow to scum like you, Gretch screamed. In rage, attack, kill them all. The final battle began. The Crawls stormed the building from every entrance. Marines met them on every floor. It was close quarters combat now, room to room, hand to hand. Jiho was out of ammunition entirely. He fought with his combat knife, facing 2 Crawl soldiers at once. He was smaller, weaker, but he was faster and he was desperate. One Crawl fell, then the other. Sora used her last explosive to collapse a hallway, burying A dozen crawl soldiers. The explosion nearly buried her too, but Hun pulled her out of the rubble. Me had one bullet left, just one. She saw Grez across the courtyard directing the attack. She took careful aim. One shot, one chance. She fired. Grez stumbled. The bullet hit his shoulder, not his head, but it was enough. The mighty war master fell to his knees. His soldiers saw their leader bleeding, and then the sky opened up. Terran warships emerged from jump space directly over the city. They had not waited the full time. They had burned their engines to the breaking point to arrive early. The lead ship opened fire on the crawl fleet. In minutes, the enemy ships were debris. Drop pods began to fall, but these pods carried reinforcements, fresh Terran Marines, thousands of them. The crawl army broke. They ran. Those who could not run surrendered. Their fleet was gone. Their leader was wounded. Their spirit was shattered. Doyen walked out of the council building to meet Gretch. The crawl war master was on his knees, blood dripping from his wound. He looked up at the human officer. You should have left, Grez said. You could have lived. Doyen looked at him with cold eyes. You don't understand us at all. We're Terran Marines. We heard people calling for help. We came. We stayed. That's what we do. That's all we'll ever do. He gestured to his troops. Take him. Make sure he gets medical attention. Even bastards like him deserve that much. The cleanup took days. The crawl prisoners were processed. The dead were honored. Both Terran and Velran dead laid to rest with full military honors. The city of Thessa was damaged but standing. The people were traumatized but alive. 8,000 Velan civilians had survived because 43 Marines decided that orders could wait. A week later, there was a ceremony in the central plaza, the same plaza where Sora had begun building defenses. Elder Vithar stood before a monument that the Velrons had built. It showed figures emerging from mist, Marines in armor coming to the rescue. The inscription read in both languages. They heard us. They came. They stood. Vahar spoke to the assembled crowd. We are a peaceful people. We build art and write poetry. We thought war was beneath us. We were wrong. War is not beneath anyone. It is a reality of this galaxy. He gestured to the Marines standing in formation. But we also learned something else. We learned that the galaxy is not entirely cruel. We learned that there are warriors who fight not for conquest, but for protection, not for glory, but for others. He turned to Captain De Yin. You came when no one else would. You stayed when you could have fled. You fought when the odds were impossible. You are the finest people I have ever known. Down saluted. We're just Marines. Sir, we do what we're trained to do. No. Var said firmly, you did what you chose to do, and that choice saved my entire world. Jiho stood in the ranks, his arm in a sling. Next to him, Teho stood with bandages under his uniform. Sara had a black eye and a limp. Meyer's hands were wrapped from burns. Hyan looked like he had aged 10 years, but they were all smiling because they had done it. They had heard the call, they had answered, and they had won. 3 Marines had died in the battle. Their names were added to the monument. The Velrons would remember them forever. Songs would be written about them. Children would learn their stories. Vesa approached Tehaho after the ceremony. I wanted to thank you, she said. You taught me to fight. You taught yourself, Teho replied. I just showed you how to hold a rifle. The Courage was all yours. Will you come back, she asked, to visit Tejo? Smiled, maybe if you need us, we will. Always need friends like you. As the Marine ship prepared to leave orbit, the Velen Council made a formal request to join the Terran Alliance. Not as subjects, not as subordinates, but as allies, as friends. The request was approved immediately. Hana stood on the bridge of the ship looking down at the planet. Dr. Yunache stood beside her. Do you think they'll be okay? Yuna asked. Yeah, Hana said, we taught them how to stand up for themselves. Now they'll teach others. The galaxy is about to learn what happens when you mess with Terran allies, and what does happen. Hana smiled. Terran Marines come knocking, and we don't knock politely. The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Pelion system behind, but the story of what happened there spread quickly. Across the galaxy, weak species began to hope. Strong species began to think twice about who they attacked, because now everyone knew the truth. Humanity had reached the stars, and they had brought their values with them. Protect the innocent. Stand against bullies. Answer the call for help. Always answer the call. Somewhere in the outer rim, another distress signal was being sent. Another species was calling for aid, and somewhere Terran Marines were already burning toward them at maximum speed. Because that's what they did. That's what they would always do.